Chapter 22. Master of the House. For many years, Deborah and I welcomed Japanese exchange students into our home. Girls who had come to America for the experience of living and studying here for a time and improving their English. It was an enriching adventure for us all, especially our 3 daughters, who became quite accustomed to our having long-term guests. Our first student was named Kazuko Ozawa, and she was with us for about a year. Just before she left to return to Japan, she introduced us to a friend, who she assured us wanted to replace her. Her name was also Kazuko Tsunematsu. My introduction took place when I came home from work one night and was greeted at the door by both Kazukos, each wearing a beautiful, formal kimono. "Welcome, master of the house," they said in unison, bowing gracefully. How could I resist? Over the years, our kids referred to them as Little Kazuko and Big Kazuko. It was in 1964, and we were about to move. Our new home had a large swimming pool, and we arranged the close of escrow so that the Japanese girls could enjoy it for a week before Big Kazuko had to leave. Through the years, the students were diverse. Some were shy and reserved, others extroverted, some naive, others sophisticated. Deborah remembers all 12 of them in detail. Names, personal histories, likes and dislikes, appearances. Their names are like music. Keoko, Kotoyo, Manami, Kiyomi, Hanai, Sayuri. Alas, I recall them only as one who swam laps in our pool compulsively at 4 o'clock in the morning, another who was anorexic, the one who got a job at our favorite Japanese restaurant. She later went to New York to study design. The striking older girl with a series of American boyfriends she wanted to entertain in her room, although I insisted she leave the door open. For about 6 years after my mother died, my father lived with us, and his reactions to our guests were as enigmatic as they sometimes were themselves. But not little Kazuko. She was special. She came to us when she was 17. She finished high school and graduated from Mills College while she was still with us, with a double major and a master's degree. And she remains a member of our family today, like an older sister to our girls. And now she herself is a grandmother. Kazuko was already very articulate in English when we first met her, a compulsive student whose father had an exchange professor in microbiology at UCLA. He came for dinner once when he was in LA on business. His English was excellent. He was tall and thin, distinguished, graying, and uncomfortable. With some effort, I persuaded him to remove his suit jacket, and in his shirt pocket I recognized the distinct outline of a pack of cigarettes. Kazuko had told him that Deborah was trying to get me to quit smoking, so he refrained from asking. I took pains to reassure him, and during the evening we smoked together outside. Kazuko was, and is still, pretty and petite, with an outgoing personality, a marvelous sense of humor, and an active interest in world affairs. While she was in college, she fell in love with a tall, blonde American boy, Bob Palazzo. Our daughters were delighted with that, teasing her mercilessly, pointing out that if they married, Kaz's name would be Kazuko Palazzo. But they didn't marry. When she wrote her parents about Bob, they immediately summoned her back to Yokohama, where she was promptly engaged to Ichiro Tajima, a young man the family knew who was on his way to a successful engineering career. Later, Kazuko confided to us that she had finally yielded when her mother pointed out that she would never really be comfortable in the United States in a mixed marriage. Whether or not Kazuko believed that, she conceded the point. And, after all, Tajima may have seemed more comfortable than Palazzo. We kept in close touch with Kazuko over the years, and stayed with her one night in Chappaqua, New York, not far from where we were attending a cousin's wedding. Kazuko picked us up at our hotel, and we had a lovely reunion with her. We knew that Japanese businessmen were rotated abroad every 3 years or so, which Kazuko found very difficult, but she loved living in Chappaqua while Ichiro was working in the city. They rented the house backed up to the open, spacious lawns of the Reader's Digest, and the schools were excellent. Unfortunately, they were transferred to South Africa for a time, and Kaz hated it. She said she was treated like a second-class citizen there. One of the mementos from that trip was a snapshot of my Aunt Sarah spontaneously cuddling Kazuko's baby Kenzo. The image was a strange precursor of the marriage of Sarah's daughter, Minda, to a successful Japanese businessman named Shoku. Shortly after our daughter Melissa was married, Ichiro called from San Francisco to say he'd be in L.A. briefly and asked if we could meet him at LAX. Of course we agreed, and we met him in the airport restaurant. We thought, for lunch. We ordered a meal, but Ichiro, handsome and debonair, just drank coffee. He had to catch another plane, he said, handing us a beautifully wrapped wedding present for Melissa, and we said our goodbyes. We soon learned that Ichiro had no business at all in L.A., his sole purpose in flying was to deliver the present for Melissa, and then he returned immediately to the business he did have in San Francisco. That was all Shirley Kazuko's doing. For many years after she and Ichiro were married, Kazuko had urged us to visit her in Japan. Finally, 22 years after she'd left our home, she'd sent us a round-trip plane ticket and checks, vowing not to take no for an answer. Ichiro was secure by then and in an excellent job. The family was comfortable. She was neither working as a translator nor taking classes, for a change. Her mother insisted we come. It was now or never. Later, Kazuko showed me some of her current work, translating complex scientific papers from English into Japanese. I understood none of it. It was uniquely Japanese, her need to reciprocate our hospitality, and we simply could not refuse. We tried to think of things to bring to Kazuko and her family that would be useful and suitable. For Ichiro, we'd chosen 3 bottles of excellent scotch. For the kids, U.S. team sweatshirts. They were very popular. Toys and books. What the youngest, Kenzo, really liked were the red, white, and blue pencils we bought him. They weren't available in Japan. Nor were ordinary stationery and paper placemats, which Kazuko reluctantly asked for. We spent 3 weeks in Japan, primarily as guests of Kazuko. Her aristocratic mother, her father had died, and Ichiro. I have never been comfortable accepting favors, and dealing with the excessive kindness proved difficult for me. However, Deborah enjoyed it and claimed that my problem was a control issue, reminding me once more of how much time and money I'd spent helping her get her master's degree in marriage and family therapy. One of the academic assertions that I paid for was her classic, rather inelegant comment during arguments, "Your process sucks." During the first and last weeks we were at Kazuko's home, a compact, convenient, and modern house in a residential section outside of Yokohama. We slept bundled in a futon on the floor of the tatami room, enjoyed their Japanese bath, the intercom played Home on the Range when the water got hot, and the heated toilet seat, and generally basked in the warmth of the family routine. Ichiro came home for dinner several times, apparently an unusual occurrence, and each day Kazuko insisted on escorting us to various local points of interest. Off the beaten tourist path, we frequently found ourselves the only foreigners, but for the most part, people were too polite to notice. For the second week, Kazuko and her mother had planned a trip on the famous bullet train, with stops where they had made special arrangements for us in advance. Apparently, one of Mrs. Tsunematsu's extensive holdings included interests in several upscale hotels. I managed to enjoy myself thoroughly, except just before we left for the week, when Kazuko's mother, who spoke no English, took us to lunch and stuffed an envelope filled with money into my jacket pocket. We didn't spend it at all, and when we returned to Kazuko's, I insisted she let us return what was left. The sights, the smells, the sounds were wonderful. One of our ex-students, Kaiko, managed to locate us on a train during a side trip, present in hand, and visited with us so long that she was unable to get off before the train pulled out of the station. She rode with us to the end of the line, and we found out later, borrowed the return fare from the conductor. She had left her mother in a sickbed to find us. Another, Yoshi, met us in Kyoto with her gentleman friend, a charming, energetic older man. She wore a colorful, elegant kimono, and he drove us around all day in his Bentley, stopping for meals and entertainment at a very expensive restaurant, an exclusive hilltop inn, the deer park where the deer roamed freely and were hand-fed by tourists, a creative sushi bar, food was alive there, and a clearly fashionable geisha house. We were overwhelmed and embarrassed, particularly when we visited an exotic kimono shop, where he wanted to buy Deborah a fine silk kimono. We tried to make him understand, he spoke no English and Yoshi's was rusty, that we just couldn't accept it. We'd learned a few Japanese words and phrases, but the term overkill was beyond us, and probably would have been inappropriate since they knew we had just returned from Hiroshima. During our last week with Kazuko, she took us to meet a charming couple who were friends of hers and Ichiro's. They lived with their 2 children in a typically small, tidy Japanese apartment with one notable feature: double sliding bookcases, one in front of the other, a great space saver. Kazuko's house was built off the ground, as was customary, and her kitchen floor had a trap door that gave access to cold storage for fruits and vegetables. The couple were obviously well educated and sophisticated. They spoke no English, but we learned through Kazuko that he was a newspaperman and loved American television. His favorite program was 77 Sunset Strip, which I'd produced in the 60s. I didn't know the program was seen in Japan, and I'd have given anything to hear "Kuki, Kuki, lend me your comb," sung in Japanese. When we got back to L.A., I pulled out my only copy of a Sunset Strip script, which I had unaccountably saved, and sent it to them. I also sent Ichiro several books on word origins and phrases that he asked for. Japanese bookstores have very few books in English, and he was curious about terms like jaywalking. Several of our students have kept in touch with us, remembering birthdays and other special occasions, but our friendship with Kazuko has been consistent. She visited us for a few days a couple of years ago, and twice we've had her daughter, Naoko, a young film student, stay with us. On one occasion, I showed her around the Hollywood studios where I knew people, and she was able to visit the sets of series in production. Hosting Naoko did little to assuage the burden of my control issue, and it could not begin to reciprocate Kazuko and Ichiro's hospitality during our Japanese sojourn. But through Naoko, we were briefly able to reach out to Kazuko again, revisiting our history together and maintaining our connection, and the fond memory of that cozy toilet seat.